Hey there, you me and DC fans, and welcome if you are new. I am the stepson of Krypton,
And I'm Mantis.
and today we are having a discussion of elseworlds. Do we need it, or are we better off without it? Mantis, are you ready to get on into the discussion?
I have been ready for the last 10 seconds.
And that's all you need. So,
Yeah.
without further ado, then we'll go ahead and get on into the discussion. All right, guys. So now I know we've done several different videos talking about the Elseworlds timeline. Obviously, we have the Batman, and we're getting ready to get the sequel, and we have the beloved Penguin show that is, kind of taking HBO Max by storm. Everybody is in love with the show. I know I just finished episode 6 the other day, so I'm excited to kind of see where it's going. It's suspenseful, but it raises the question: like, do we need an alternate, like an Elseworlds timeline, to be running concurrent with the DCU? Mantis, how do you feel about it?
Yeah. I was thinking of this and it's not necessarily it doesn't have to be specific to DC. I mean, it's the most prominent example we have at this point. I think we touched on this in a previous video about Deadpool and Wolverine, how it's not, what did you say? It's not in the main universe. Like the Deadpool Wolverine, like Deadpool in general is not in the main, I don't know, MCU universe, right? I can't remember
I
what you
have
said.
no clue what he's talking. No, I'm joking. What are you talking about? So obviously in Deadpool and Wolverine, you see it say, and it doesn't explain it, but it says like he goes over to the 616 universe, which is the main Marvel universe. It's kind of like Earth Prime on the DC side,
Right.
but it's the main Marvel universe, and it's the sacred timeline. But obviously, Deadpool's universe is fuck.
Not.
I'm trying to think of like what, but it's the 100015. Okay. Don't
Right.
know why that was escaping me on there. It's like 10,000,
Okay. And so
whatever. But
that's
they are different universes.
see that's my thing. Like so MCU has the kind of the same thing going on there. I and again, I don't want to say that I don't like, and let's just kind of go back over to the DC side here. Um I'm not saying that I don't like the films or the shows in particular that have come out in the Elseworlds like universe timeline thing. Now Joker 2, as we did a video, and I didn't even go watch it because it got terrible reviews. So I'm just gonna say that was garbage. However, the first Joker I did like. Again, the Penguin series, as Cal mentioned, I haven't seen episode 6, which released this past week, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten a chance to watch that one yet, but I've seen all the other ones up until that. Fully enjoyed this show. Fantastic show. And even the Batman, while it's not a great film, it's okay. It's an okay Batman film. But I guess your question was, do we need these things? And I don't need is like a, yeah, and I know put this in the title of our document. Do we need Elseworlds movies and shows? But it's more of like, can they coexist? And I say no. And even like we've talked about this before, the problem you run into with having Elseworlds and using main characters in there, because again, you are wanting to use popular characters to put in there because you get to tell a completely different story. That's fine. But you can't do them both at the same time. You can't have Batman, the actual Batman, with Superman in the main DCU, and also have Batman in Elseworlds at the same time.
No, I'm your replacement.
No, you're not.
I'm gonna have to cite the case of ain't broke, V don't fix. Seriously, I don't even know why you're here.
It's too confusing, and it causes a bunch of problems, right? So it's like, is it okay that we have these other things going on the side, and they're taking up the space at the time right now, and that's okay because we're not even really getting into the meat of the DCU, right? We're not even there yet. Um, but again, is this going to keep going on? Like, are they going to keep doing more Batman films? I know they got 3, right? So, and two's not even. Did they start filming 2 yet? I thought they said they had scheduled it,
I think
but
it's scheduled. I don't think it's actually started filming yet.
okay. So, but there is going to be 3 of those. So that means
Maybe.
we're not going to get.
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, maybe. I mean, that's what they say. Does that mean we're not? They're not going to. They're not going to do both at the same time again. So you're not going to get another Batman in the actual DCU for. I mean, how long is that going to take for them to complete all that? 5 years before they start filming, and then maybe you could do it a year or 2 after the final Batman film. Like I guess that's my only problem with it, right? Like it just limits the stories that you can put in one universe versus the other, right? Now you can't put Penguin in the other. This is why like all the Batman shit's only happening in Elseworlds, right? Like it's not happening in both.
Well, the other thing is too, if you're gonna change out Batman's, and even if you're saying this is a different universe, you got to have at least a little bit of time gap, right? And right now you have that perfect time gap. If you let's just say you canceled the Robert Pattinson Batman sequel and you said, "Fuck it, we're gonna do this. We're gonna release the Superman, and then we're gonna release Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and then we're gonna have the Lanterns come and Peacemaker. We're gonna do all these different projects, and then we're gonna get to Batman, right?" Well, then you've been a few years without a Batman, and people are ready for a reboot. And they're ready to see a new take on it. But going from a second Batman movie, let's assume they don't do a third, because my thought is if the second one doesn't do very well, they're probably just like the Joker was the first nail in the coffin of Elseworlds. I feel like the second Joker, because it didn't
Could
do
be,
very
yeah.
well. It didn't even come close. Well, I think as it finally left theaters, it hit the 200 million mark globally. So it didn't even make its money back, for one, and then two, that there was an article that had mentioned what these movies cost when it comes to marketing and everything, other than its normal just production budgets and all that. So it's not even close to making its money back. It'd have to do over 400. I think they said it had to do at least 400 million to be profitable, right? And it's just done 2.
Oof.
It's 3
Oof.
weeks in theaters, and then they've already scheduled its streaming release, and it's Blu-ray, which you can't get in regular fucking stores around here anymore. But they've already scheduled all that, right? Because it did so bad. So I think if this Batman sequel doesn't do well, I think that's going to be probably like the final nail, and people are say, you know what, like let's just not, we're just not going to continue with the Elseworlds because we probably won't get another Joker movie. Okay, they're just going to let that one die.
Yeah.
And the Penguin may be successful, but the Penguin, the great thing with if you kind of pay attention to what's going on in the Penguin series, spoilers for those who haven't seen it, there's not going to be any direct ones, but it really doesn't tie into the movie that much, right? It does its own thing. Yeah, it has like obviously it's got certain elements of it, but if let's say the Elseworlds timeline died, you could still run with that Penguin for if you wanted to do a couple of seasons. I don't know that's going to happen. I feel like with these big hit fire shows like that, like Penguin stuff, it gets 1, 2, maybe 3 seasons and then they die off. Um, that just seems to be the thing anymore. Shows running 9, 10 seasons, just that's kind of not, especially on a streaming service, that's just not a thing anymore because it takes them so long. I mean, you're a year to 2 years out in between seasons when you're dealing with these shows versus like Arrow and things like that, where like, hey, you only had a few months before you had to start filming the next season.
Yeah, no, and again, these shows because they release and they don't do as many of the episodes, like you said. There's a lot more time in between. I think you're right. A good point you made about some time that needs to happen in between a reboot, right? Like it's been a while since the when did the Batman come out in the Elseworlds? Do you know? Do you
Oh,
remember?
I will look up
2000
real quick while you keep talking.
2019, anyway, something like that. Like it's been a while since we'd gotten since the Justice League, right? Like that's I guess the last
2022.
Batman. 20, okay. So, Justice League, there's been some time there for it to breathe, right? That would be my only thing. Is the longer this goes on in the Elseworlds, the longer you're going to have to wait to bring it to the mainstream and get the non version of that Batman, right? The so people can cleanse their palates of it. And you know, I don't know. Like personally, I don't care. I can distinguish both things. Like if it's me, put Batman in the DCU. Make a different one. Like I can. I'm not a child. I know the difference, right? Like I I know this is not the same Batman as this one. This is all completely separate from this, right? Like not remotely, you know,
That is
attributed to each
true, but
other.
you also have to remember we're talking about the average person that likes these movies, but isn't like they don't dive into the Batman lore and they don't watch the animated, they don't read any comics. The average person that just maybe, especially like okay, you're talking about like the person that may go with their partner to watch the movie, but they don't really care about it. But then they're like, well, wait a minute, I thought Batman was this, and it starts to raise too many questions, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it with the DCU, we had a Flash movie for what it was. We had Wonder Woman, we had Aquaman, and we had Batman. Okay. If you look at what James Gunn has planned thus far, that we know is confirmed, we don't have any of those characters confirmed on who could play them if they're going to come in. We have a completely different Green Lantern than it was even in the movies. Now, granted, Hal Jordan is going to come into the Lantern series, but in the movie, we've
Not
got Guy Gardner,
right.
we have Mr. Terrific, we have Hot Girl. Like we don't have any of the normal people thus far that we have seen in the DCEU. Superman is the only exception to that right there. And then a little bit if you want to count the brief period that we had Supergirl in the Flash movie. I don't even count that because she was in it for all of like fucking 20 minutes.
I
Um,
I agree. Yeah.
so we're getting the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow movie, but like James Gunn is because, and I feel like a personal opinion. Hate on me if you want to. I know you guys will. But like I feel like that's because that's he's doing that. He's given that palate cleansing time in between these characters. Let it die down. Let the the Aquaman, the Wonder Woman. If you're going to replace these characters, let it. You got to give it some time, right? So let's focus on some characters that we haven't seen thus far. Let's get fuck. Well, I mean, we even got a little bit of Martian Manhunter at the end of the Snyder cut of the Justice League. But even if you didn't
Yeah.
want to do that, okay, they're going with some characters right now. They're going with other characters that a lot of people aren't. Well, a lot of non-comic book fans and the cartoons and fans and stuff like that aren't familiar with. So let it die down. But that's where I agree. Like the Elseworlds thing, I just feel like just needs to stop. Like, I don't get me wrong, it's part of it was Robert Pattinson, but also it's just I don't like the Batman Year Two, like the way they kind of did. I mean, I think it's cool and all, but like I just it for me, I mean, I like to see Batman as Batman, right? Not this kind of emo. He's trying to learn how to be, whatever. Like it was an okay movie, but it wasn't my favorite. Okay, I could do without a sequel to that Batman movie. Right? I could obviously the Joker movie failed, and I don't need to. I, I think we could just kill the Elseworlds and be done. Right? Because I don't want to see Elseworlds keep going, limping along, and then them try to tie it into the goddamn DCU in some bullshit attempt and just no, like I don't want to see that. These multiverse lines they're dying out. You're not doing them well in the movies. They need to stop. Okay, we need to have
Well,
one
and
universe for each.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So Joker is not related to anything else. It's its own thing. So if they were going to make the Elseworlds thing,
Kind of.
stuff in Elseworlds is like all its own thing. Like it's not related to each other, and you can't really say that now because the Penguin is in the same universe as the Batman. Like it's directly through the same damn actors in it. Plays the same character. The thing I think when you're talking about the Batman, you didn't really care for it. I didn't necessarily have a problem with Robert Pattinson. I had a problem with the villains, and this is the thing we've talked about it so many times. DC has a leg up on MCU on this because their villains are better. But to me, especially in a darker universe, but also in like even in the DCU, I hate to say this, but again, I think your villain has to hit. Like you have to get it right. You can't you can't be an afterthought. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, as long as Superman is good, then the movie will be fine. Doesn't matter. And I don't believe that at all. Just like that movie, I don't necessarily have a problem with Robert Pattinson. He could have played the greatest Batman ever, right? I just think the villain is what really sets the tone for the grapple that you inevitably have in every comic book movie. Is there's a good guy and a bad guy, and they got to do this, right? And so when your villain in that movie, the Riddler, was just, and this is nothing to do with the actor that played the Riddler in that film, I just didn't like the writing for the character. It was just I don't like the premise of it. It went like, I don't even think it went even further than on the opposite end of the spectrum than Jim Carrey's Riddler was. Like,
Riddle me this.
Riddle me this!
Riddle me this. Riddle me that.
the Riddler in all of the comics and in the movies, like, he's a whimsical like villain, like a criminal. Like, he doesn't really care too much about killing people or doing that. Like, I mean, that's part of it, but he doesn't. That's not really the necessary thing. He gets joy out of and satisfaction out of tricking people and confusing them. Is yeah, and essentially Batman for that, right? Like, and they didn't really. There wasn't a that really didn't happen in the film, and that's what I was wanting. Now, the the villain that I think did the best job in there was of course Colin Farrell, which is why he got his own spinoff. As you could see, he did. And again, if you haven't seen it, we brought it up several times. We've done videos on it. If you have not watched The Penguin, you need, even if you only get Max for a month, get it this month. You can wait till tomorrow. Get it tomorrow and get it for November, because the show should be over. Does it go eight episodes?
I think so. I believe it's doing 8. Don't quote me on that.
So mid-November, you'll be able to watch the whole series. He does a fantastic job as Oswald Cobblepot. No, he does a great job as the Penguin. And that's hard to do because the Penguin is not, in historical terms, like Danny DeVito, I think did the best, but he was more of, a crazy Tim Burton, like monsterish type Penguin, than the mob type Penguin that Colin Farrell plays. Yeah. But in any event, that's my thing with that. And again, I don't have a problem with him doing that stuff. At the same time, it doesn't bother me, but it shouldn't take away at any point from the main universe. Like, that's my thing. Like, if you're going to spend resources and writers and all this stuff because you want to do this little thing on the side and it makes your main characters, in this sense, Superman, which is what, like we said, the Elseworlds could have baller ass shit in it, right?
I would like to compliment you gentlemen on a very classy bowler ass spread with cheeses that I've never even seen before.
Every other movie in the DCU could have baller ass shit, but if your Superman movie sucks, everything's gonna suck. It just is. That's how it's gonna be. It's how people look at it. Doesn't mean it's right, but that's what's gonna that is what's gonna happen. So I'm with you in the sense that if you can walk and chew gum at the same time, so be it. But if you can't, you need to spit out the gum and make sure you can walk.
I just feel like, because Warner Brothers is putting out the Elseworlds timeline, but James Gunn and Peter Safran are co-CEOs of DC Studios. But they're owned by Warner. Like, I don't know why you're trying to, like, there's this infighting amongst yes, Warner Brothers owns DC Studios, but they're the CEOs of DC Studios. Like, why are we trying to fight against one another for something? Just because I think, here's the thing. No. There were parts of Robert Pattinson's Batman I like. I love the detective side with the contact lenses, things like that. There were certain things. I'm not a huge Robert Pattinson fan. I'm not a huge way of the way they played him as Bruce Wayne and all that stuff. Same thing I have with, I don't like how they portrayed Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne. Like there are things that I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to Batman, and they tick all the boxes, right? I'm sorry, it just
Yeah.
is. Same thing with Superman. I'm gonna want somebody who kind of ticks most of the boxes, or as many as you can. But like with the Penguin series, that doesn't have anything to do with Batman. I honestly feel like Colin Farrell's Penguin wouldn't. I mean, that's not a good Batman villain, right? Because he's a mob boss, and what they're doing, at least with Colin Farrell, the way they're portraying it with Colin Farrell, is he's more of a mob bossy kind of thing. Like that's not something Batman's necessarily going to get involved in, because this is like gang wars and gang turf and stuff like that, where Batman's gone after more of the Penguin in with Danny DeVito was trying to take over and basically go after City Hall and things like that, where it's more of a focused villain that he has somebody to go after and attack. Where Colin Farrell is playing this Penguin as this kind of underling mob boss that's just controlling everything behind the shadows, right? So it's not really almost as much of a Batman villain the way they're playing it. So you could still do that and not have it tied to the Batman and all this other stuff. I just feel like you need to don't overcomplicate things, don't waste the resources, focus on the DCU, because you got to get this right? People aren't going to want to have to deal with another fucking reboot of the DC uh
Won't survive.
after all the shit. Yeah, it's not going to survive. People are just going to kind of eventually there's going to be this burnout. Like, guys, we've given you multiple opportunities. Us fans, we want to see the Brainiacs and the Dark Sides and the Doomsdays, not counting what was in fucking Batman v Superman, come into these goddamn
Right.
franchises, right? We want to see these awesome villains, like Mantis was alluding to. Like, we want to see these villains come into it and have great stories, right? I don't want to keep having to fucking every 3 years. We're rebooting again because we fucked up. We're rebooting because we fucked up. So it's just like, okay, like
All you gotta do is not fuck up.
you guys are all technically under one huge umbrella corporation. Not to be confused with Resident Evil. Like, dial it back a little bit. Focus on one goddamn thing. Eat what's on your fucking plate. Okay? Like, just
don't
do
be that douchebag at Golden Corral that gets like a whole plate and he eats like one like chicken nugget off of it and then goes back and gets a whole other full plate of food and doesn't eat yeah. No, I mean I kind of agree with you there. I would agree the Penguin, again, that's Penguin before he becomes the Penguin. So, I mean, you could definitely do that. I don't think it's going to take away from it, because you're right. Batman, even if let's just say Robert Pattinson's Batman was fully fledged Batman and he was fighting criminals and stuff like that, like, he'd be more apt to go after the Maronis, like the crime syndicate family, not some driver or some underling, like, guy that just is in charge of distributing their drugs. Like, it's not a thing. He may get caught in the crossfire, but he's not like, it's not Batman versus the fourth guy down on the totem pole. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. So, I mean, I agree with you there.
Like, what the fuck's her name? Sophia. Batman might go after her because she's the hangman. She just got out of Arkham. She's known for killing. So if somebody mimicked her kills and Batman thought it was her, he'd go after her, things like that. But right now, the way they're playing Oswald, like, he's not going to deal with somebody who's just maybe trying to be an up and comer. It's kind of like once Oswald's, there's a line, right? And if Oswald is a habitual line stepper, then Batman's going to jump in. But right now, they could play it and you never hear another mention, because to this day, you still haven't heard anything about Batman in the Penguin series. They've not mentioned it. Now, you know what happens, but you've not heard about Batman. And you could roll with that and never have to mention Batman again, and not tied to Robert Pattinson's Batman at all.
Sure.
And be fine. And it'd still be a great series. And I kind of feel like, I mean, that's just the route you need to go. Now, I could be crazy on this, because you see, Mantis and I don't always agree on things, and we're not in 100% agreement on this, but that's where we need your guys' help. Let us know in the comments, do you think Elseworlds just needs to go away? Now, keep the Penguin, keep the show, it can run, like we just talked about, but does the Elseworlds need to just stop, and we just need to focus, if we're going to have the DCU, focus on that? What do you guys think? I need support here.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do any other Elseworlds things. Quite honestly, I think once the Batman and the Penguin run its course, and even like then, is it really the Elseworlds? It's literally one movie line
It's
and
Elseworld.
one yeah, and one series that's loosely tied to the movies. Like they're loosely tied to each other.
It's
You know,
Else
I mean,
Moon. Like it's not even that. It's an Else asteroid. Like it's not even like we're
yeah,
bumping it down the level of celestial or celestial objects here. Like it's just like it's not any. Again, it's going to end up being the Penguin basically.
yeah. And the thing is, I think people looked at the Elseworlds like this is how I looked at them was they're definitely not related to the mainline stories, but also they're darker. They're more gritty. They're more violent. They're not as comic booky, right? Like, I mean, quite frankly, the Penguin, it could be a drama. Like, if he was named someone else, it could have been another like crime show. Like, you know what I mean? Like it. The characters aside from him and maybe the Maronis and Falcones, you could just change their names and it could have just been some gangs of New York type shit. Like, you know, it really there's nothing tying it to the Batman universe aside from again what we mentioned. There's it's not a and this is what I said, like you mentioned, like it doesn't Batman is not in it. So it's you can easily overlook a lot of that stuff and it's
Well,
fine.
because they don't even mention him. He's not even a
Yeah.
mention. Nobody said, "Well, the Batman's out there." Like nobody mentions him. So like it would be easy just to like again,
Yeah.
if you change the names or if you just said
But
"fuck
it's
it," we
like
were
what
gonna run with
happened?
Arkham.
Like that's the thing because again, and this is the last thing, it has really nothing to do with what this started with, but like I just want to ask this question because in the Penguin series, it starts like you see the walls get blown, right? Like what happens in the end of the Batman film. Like the walls blow or the dams or whatever, so like all the water rushes in, floods out all of the Crown, was it Crown Point or Crown Heights or whatever the Vic used to live in or whatever, like floods all that out. Like that's what happened and then this picks up, right? That's what's going on. But like you're right, like nothing. I mean, you don't hear anything about the Baronis or Falcones worried about Batman. Like they don't care. No one's like, oh god, do we do our stuff at night tonight? Like there's no
There's not
bat
even been
signal.
like a
There's nothing.
news blurb about Batman. Like,
Yeah,
hey, and they show the picture of him or whatever. There's nothing. Like, if you knew nothing about Batman, you would never be able to tie this series to the Batman movie.
yeah, bingo. That's my point. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, and maybe that's by design, right? They're like, hey, if we don't bring him into this, if the Elseworlds dies, we
Yep.
could still run our series for several seasons and be successful because it's not really tied. It's just you hear Gotham and you know Oswald and things like that, but and like I said, the families and stuff, but it doesn't really have any ties. And again, when we talk about the super final last thoughts here, when we talk about like the having the space of time to kind of cleanse the palate of the character before you do a reboot, right? I'll probably have gray fucking hair by the time Penguin would come into James Gunn's fucking DCU. That like it's not gonna matter if this series runs because he's obviously gonna bring in Batman. The first villain he's gonna bring into Batman isn't gonna be the Penguin.
Dude, I'm gonna be on Medicare before Darkseid gets brought out. I think.
I may have dementia. I don't know. By the time like I get a dark side something, like God only fucking knows where
Hey,
we're gonna
that'll be
be.
good for you though. You could watch it again for the first time, several times. It'll be great.
Alzheimer's isn't all bad. You get to meet new people every day.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Uh,
second time.
yeah, that'll be maybe I can forget the Daredevil movie and things like that, and I can just start fresh. As far as I know, this goddamn franchise has just started.
Oh. Oh, news on that. That's released coming out now. Did you see that?
What?
They released some news on the Daredevil, the new
Oh yeah,
series or whatever.
Yeah, and they also released some pretty sad news on the Blade franchise that it's not coming out. Like, I think Blade had it right in Deadpool and Wolverine. There's only ever going to be one Blade. They seem goddamn hell bent on only having one Blade, and that was Wesley Snipes.
Yep.
But guys, I apologize. This one went on a little bit longer. I actually thought this was going to be a really short video, but as we have said many other ones, usually when we say that, that's going to be our longest videos. If you have made it with us this far, we definitely do appreciate it. And you consider giving this video a like. He's going to show you the graphic of kind of what it'll look like, but it's really going to be down here. Subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our insanity, all the discussion of the elseworlds that may or may not be coming to an end sooner rather than later, as well as everything with the DCU and the MCU. We haven't forgotten our Marvel fans. And then whatever else that you guys just decide you want to see us or do or discuss or talk about, because we are going to have some more informational videos coming out about some of these other characters that may or may not be as well known as we get closer to the Superman release. So if you are subscribed and you have the little bell and all the other bullshit that YouTube makes you go through just to get a notification on it, and you aren't sick of us yet,
Stupid.
have all that done and you will get notified when we release these new videos. So, Mantis, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
You were trying to think
We
of
covered
something.
it all.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for us here on this episode of You, Me, and DC. Until next time, we will see you then.
Later.